VisionQuest actually has an interesting history that goes back almost 25 years. And we decided that the best way to do this was to become our own customer. And so we bought the machines themselves, we came up with the money, we came up with the contracts, and we made the wind and sold the electricity ourselves. So it's based on philosophical desire to create clean energy and get it out to the marketplace, and to do a good job doing that.
Well, welcome to the Castle River Wind Farm. It's a fairly normal day. In other words, it's pretty darn windy. Our wind farm's going at full output right now. We do have a few machines that are being serviced by crews, but every single machine otherwise is going at least full output, maybe even a bit more. So that's about 37, 38 megawatts. That's enough for a town of about 17, 18,000 homes. So that's pretty good.
Castle River Wind Farm was initially started in 1997 with a single exploratory wind turbine at the site. We added additional turbines there in 2000 and 2001, and now there's 60 turbines there. It's flanked by the mountains about 20 kilometers to the west, and we get excellent winds coming out of the west from BC. There's a bit of a speed up effect that happens as the wind passes through the mountains and hits the prairies right there. So here we are at the maintenance shack at the Castle River Wind Farm. This small shack and this computer system are all we need to control and run the wind farm. This system monitors all the wind turbines in the wind farm, and it has a modem to dial up the remote wind turbines that we have in other parts of southern Alberta. It checks the performance and the status of all the machines, and if there's ever any problems, it actually will call the operators using text messaging on their cell phones and tell them exactly the nature of the problem and which machine and where it is.
So we're here in the base of the tower. The machine's running right now, and we're looking at the control panel right here. This major display right now shows that we're right at full output. Each blade passes the tower once every 2 seconds. And the blade pitch varying here as the wind speed changes, because these blades are computer adjusted to fit into the wind. What we'll do now is we'll gear up and we'll head up the tower. Here we are up at the top of the wind turbine. This box at the top is called the nacelle. It's the cabin that holds all the mechanical parts. Only electrical cables run down from the top of the tower. So over my shoulder here is the rotor hub where the blades attach, and it's gently turning because we're at idle speed. The shaft from that comes into this gearbox right here, and the gearbox speeds up the shaft to the 1800 RPM that the generator requires. The generator then makes electricity. It goes into the wires which run down the tower and go into the electrical grid.
Prince Edward County Wind Farm in Ontario is modeled on our experience here in Alberta. It's a little different in that the farms in Ontario are much smaller, where we're talking about one farmer who might own 10 square miles in Alberta. We are typically talking about each farm being only 100 acres, sometimes even less in Ontario. In Prince Edward County, we found a site that is near the shore of Lake Ontario, about 1.5 kilometers to 2 kilometers inland from the shore. It's relatively flat ground in that area, but it slopes up slightly. It is a beautiful place in terms of rolling rural Ontario countryside. We found a number of landowners that were very interested in participating in this. The project that we're talking about doing there has the capability of about 20 megawatts, so that's about half the size of the Castle River Wind Farm in Pincher Creek. We're looking at 2 different wind turbine models that we'd want to use there. One is exactly the same as we're using in Pincher Creek, the 660 kilowatt unit, and to do that we would need about 32 machines at this site. We're also looking at some newer technology, which is a larger machine. We would require fewer of those. So that would be 12 of the larger machines, 1.8 megawatt ones. At this point, with the Royal Road Wind Farm, we've spent a little over a year monitoring the site, getting wind data, setting up our arrangements with the landowners, doing public consultation, including open houses, and meeting with councillors and going through an approval process.
That's a test tower VisionQuest put up, and they say that the wind generators are going to be up 3 times the height of that tower. So that's going to be pretty close to the house, you know. And if you get 3 or 6 on that line fence, and on the other line fence gets 3 or 6, and they only have to be 450 meters from the road here. Eh? So, you know, that's they're going to be close to my property no matter which way you look at it, you know.
Well, I think any time a new development comes into an area, the first thing people worry about is decreased property values. And there may be some validity for certain agricultural operations, such as hog barns, or maybe certain heavy industrial operations that cause a lot of noise and perhaps cause a lot of pollution. But there's absolutely no evidence anywhere in the world that a significant property value decrease is associated with wind turbines and wind farms. The situation in Pincher Creek has been such that the land adjacent to wind farms hasn't decreased in value at all, and the land underneath wind farms has increased in value due to the revenue associated with it. Now that's farmland, it's not acreage land and residential land, but we are mostly talking, Prince Edward County, about farmland.
The closest turbine to our house is a quarter of a mile away, and that is the closest they can come to any residence with their construction, and it's just a quarter of a mile to the first one over here. I've lived here for 25 years in this location, and when Vision Quest came to install their windmills, they came and asked me what my concerns might be with the wind farm, and as far as I was concerned, there was none. We were just quite happy to have them here. And as time went on and they continued their construction, the influence on our view just didn't bother us at all. As I keep telling people all the time, when I look out the window, if I want to see what the windmills are doing, I see the windmills. If I want to see the mountains and the hills behind, the windmills aren't there. I just don't see them. Just that simple, I don't see them. And to me, they enhance the view. They really do.
As far as location of the wind farm, to me, is concerned, I'm probably the least affected of our group. It'll approximately be 1,500 meters from me, which, you know, seems a long way, but when we're talking about something 400 feet high, it's not. But some of our group will be really affected. They're virtually going to be living right under it. And that is bad. I mean, I couldn't contemplate that. I couldn't contemplate it.
There was a fellow in the county, very good with computers, who took a digital photo and then took digital photos of wind turbines and estimated where he thought they might go and what size they might be relative to other features in the photo. It's kind of like an artist's impression of what it might look like. The trouble with that one is that it isn't done according to the setbacks, and the scale of the machines is inaccurate. He's showing machines within 100 meters of the houses, if you looked at the scale there, and we clearly have a 450 meter plus setback to the edge of where we would be from any houses and any roads. And it's very likely that we won't be any closer than 600 meters from any houses.
We've been here 4 years, and we moved here because of the beautiful nature of the place and the tranquility, the peace and quiet. I'm a photographer, a landscape photographer, and it was time for me to get away and settle down, run my own studio in the country, in the peace and quiet. Then these people came along and decided they wanted to build this industrial complex, wind turbines, at the end of my land. 13 of them are 400 feet high with flashing strobe lights, and I thought, hey, no, that's not why I came here, you know. Whatever you want to call it, it's pollution. It's visual pollution, isn't it? I mean, anything that's 400 foot high with turning blades and flashing lights, that's got to be visual pollution. I don't know what you call visual pollution if that's not it.
The really interesting thing about the visual impact of wind farms is it's like anything else. It's in the eye of the beholder. There's lots of people that think that windmills and wind farms are beautiful and soothing and relaxing and are a natural part of the landscape. But it's easy to understand that some people might not think so. I think a lot of it is just the change in the view. You know, in our landscape that we consider normal and natural, there's all sorts of features, such as power lines and guardrails and roads and houses that we don't even notice anymore because they're just part of the landscape and we don't see that they're new or different. And when people have lived with wind farms for a year, that fits into the same category. Windmills don't turn very, very fast. They aren't very noisy. They do stick up high because they've got to get in the wind, but due to the curve of the Earth's surface and hedgerows and trees and corners and roads and things, you actually can't see them from very, very far away. We normally put steady burning red lights on the top of wind turbines. And the main reason for this is a Transport Canada and Navigation Canada requirement for aircraft warning systems. There has been some concern expressed for very, very large communication type towers that steady burning red lights can confuse birds who are migrating at those high altitudes. And it's recommended apparently that flashing white strobes be used in those circumstances to prevent bird collisions. Frankly, we're not in favor of flashing white strobes because we wouldn't want to live next to those. If Transport Canada says you shall use these particular lights, we're bound by those. However, we've had very good success with steady burning red lights here in the Pincher Creek area. It hasn't caused any extra bird collisions. These machines do generate sound. There's no doubt about that. But the sound is not like a jet engine or anything like that. It's always much quieter than anyone can imagine. And it falls off very quickly with distance. In a rural setting with tractors and trucks and normal agricultural activities going on and a road nearby with traffic, the sound of the wind turbines is likely to be indistinguishable at the distances that we're talking about from nearby residences.
I think there's a misconception about, everybody seems to think we're against green energy. Everybody sees this as a green issue. It's not a green issue as far as I'm concerned. If that was a Ford car plant or something, I'd still be against it. And it's the idea of the industrial thing being built right next to where I live that I don't like.
Well, farming is an industry. Real estate activity is an industry. Certainly power generation is an industry. We don't think of windmills as being industrial because we could not put them in an industrial park. We couldn't put them in with factories and smokestacks. It wouldn't work. We need land that has open space, good exposure to the winds, and it's most compatible with farm and ranching operations.
We've gone out and replaced all our light bulbs, and it's saved a huge amount of electricity just by putting energy-conserving light bulbs in. Well, we can also get energy-saving appliances. If the government is serious about this, why doesn't the government subsidize those things, And if they're really serious about wind energy, why don't they put the infrastructure in for somewhere up north where there's a lot of wind and where nobody lives? But they don't. And I think it's a political tool. It's a nice way for us to look clean. Let's support wind energy. And it's very easy for people to support anything if they're not involved in it. And what we found here is there's been a lot of shouting about it, and then it goes away, But it doesn't go away for us.
There are some unfortunate results of this process. It has become divisive. Friends are no longer friends. Neighbors are unhappy with each other. Those that are closest to this windmill feel that they have been obviously differently affected or will be differently affected than those that live further away, yet each has equal voice. I think the greatest number of people are for it. They're not necessarily the most vocal people.
I think it's a very good idea. I think it'll save on hydro costs and other things that are good for the county.
I don't think anybody can deny that wind energy is a good thing for a whole bunch of different reasons. The issue is who wants it in their backyard, I think.
We're having a lot of trouble with the big hydro plants now, so it's a better way to get our power.
The Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters is going to the Ontario Municipal Board in order to appeal the county decision because immediately adjacent to the proposed development site is the Prince Edward County South Shore Important Bird Area. We have concerns that those turbines will kill birds and will cause the birds that have been using this area for thousands of years to avoid the area. So the question becomes then, what impact, if any, will the development proposal have on these wildlife values.
One of the reasons we picked the site we did was that it was outside of the important bird area and outside of the refuge, the wildlife refuge area that's designated by the province. Nonetheless, we've done an extensive environmental screening of the entire area, including the important bird area, to see what the potential might be for concerns with birds. And if we can't indicate to the provincial authorities that we can do this without impact on the local bird populations and the migratory bird populations, we won't be allowed to build the wind farm. One of the concerns that we always had during this entire process is that many of the people who have expressed concerns in the county were reluctant to come and talk to us. Were reluctant to express their concerns, to explore them with us so that we could try and address them. Even when we had an open house there, we had some of these people who just walked in, signed a form to say that they didn't like it, and walked out.
The amount of electricity that the wind farm produces is very insignificant. And to produce enough energy to make an impact, you'd have to cover the whole of Prince Edward County in windmills. I mean, you probably wouldn't produce enough energy for Toronto. You know, and then what do they do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when the wind doesn't blow? You know, we fire up the power stations. Boom, boom, there we go. So I don't see it as an answer. People keep saying it's leading edge technology. I think it's trailing edge.
I guess the one thing I would say is I would far sooner see this wind farm outside of my kitchen window than a coal-fired generator or a nuclear power plant of any kind. This is, to me, the future. It really is. It's the future for our community.